Hey YouTube, long time no see. I'm working on new projects, and yeah, I was able to get a garage and actually start working. So the important thing is I got a tripod made. I made it out of some scrap wood. Maybe I'll do the project build. I don't know. I filmed on my phone, so the video looks pretty bad. But I got the tripod now, so I can start showing you what I'm working on. So the first thing is I'm building some nice speakers. So these are some towers that I'm putting together. I have all the components up in my apartment. So I'm going to walk you through making these. These are the towers so far. So the wood has already been taken out with the router, so it's all nice and squared up and nice. I have this box pretty much glued together except for this panel right here, which in about 10 minutes these clamps are coming off and I'm doing that. The second panel is over here, pretty much ready to get glued. And then while that's gluing, I'm kind of just working at my workbench doing some random stuff. Okay, so last piece is going on. So firstly, degunk your wood glue. Like so, get it all over you. Next, I'm going to run a bead down here, staying away from the edges. Then I'm going to go up the spines. On these edge spines, I'm going to go on the inside. Middle spines here, we're just going to lob it nice and center in the middle. Okay, now we're going to position the board on and then clamp. Nice and easy. Now it's important when you clamp, you don't actually want to clamp the board down insanely tight. You only want to clamp it down enough that it will hold the board where you want it. No need for your clamps to be He-Man strong or anything like that. Okay, so we're all clamped. That clamp right there doesn't have a little rubber foot, so I'm using a piece of pine to not scar up the wood. I'm going to take the old rafters triangle here. Let's make sure that this is squared, which it should be considering that the wood's been all routed and it's all nice and everything, but it does not hurt to check. Looking good there, looking good there, and there, and it's safe to assume that it's also good there. Awesome. Okay, so I got the last piece on right here. It's not glued yet. But it fits on nice and perfectly. And it goes on this way because if it's flipped around the wrong way, then we got these bars that go through where the speakers need to go, so it makes it real easy. Only thing I'm concerned about is I'm going to be polyfilling in here. And it's going to be a bit hard to get the polyfill down in here because there's this spine piece that is right here. And there's another spine piece here, and then there's down in here. So, I don't know. Might have to get a bit contortion-y with my hands, but should be okay. Don't want to polyfill before I paint, because paint's going to get all inside there. So real quick before I put this top piece on, there is no real lip right there. It's pretty smooth, but over here, if I go across, hit right there. It's about a razor blades in height, where it doesn't line up. So what I'm going to do before I put the top on, I think, is I'm going to sand all of the spines right here just so I get a perfect fit. But then right here, I'm going to be making some wood filler. So I cut those pieces of pine earlier to lift that up so I can put clamps on. So I got some sawdust here. So I'm just going to scrape all the sawdust together, mix it with a bit of wood glue, and throw that on just to fill that little gap right there. Just kidding. I scraped it off. The wood filler I made was real coarse because it was with the cuttings that were just laying on the bench. So here's some much finer sawdust that I pulled out of the bag. That's where the good stuff is. So you saw what I did last time. I'm just going to do the same thing. Should be pretty flat now. Just 80 grit on the orbital, and then what's this, 220 on the sanding block just to smooth it out. So the next step, I'm going to glue this on by doing lines of glue on all of the spines and walls. However, on this top piece, I still want to get it a tiny bit closer. I think when I sanded it down, I actually sanded it a bit too far down. So I'm going to mix up some more of the wood glue, and I'm going to use the wood glue here to attach it, or the wood filler, sorry, just the sawdust and wood glue mixture. So I'll put down a tiny bit of that along this section right here, and I'll put down more wood glue on top of the wood filler to make sure it really adheres. This one, before I did the wood filler, all nice and perfectly sanded, so this was just filling in the cracks. So tomorrow I will be sanding off all this excess wood filler, and we should be left with a perfectly smooth box, which then will be done to that one as well. Then on to painting. So I got the rest of the speakers nice and sanded and smooth on the top, so now I just have to go ahead and seal them before I paint. And to do that, I'm going to do a 50-50 mixture of water and Type Bond 2, and just use these little foam rollers to paint it on. Okay. So I forgot to film this earlier, so I want to do a small batch just to show you how this is done. So to do the sealer, what we're going to use is water and wood glue. So I'm using Type Bond 2. You can do this with Type Bond 2 and 3, but not with 1. 2 is the water resistant, 3 is the waterproof. Both of those will work. I prefer Type Bond 2 just because the wood glue is a bit thicker. So I find it easier to work with. Now to do this wood sealer, we're going to mix 50-50 water and wood glue. And like I said, I'm doing a small batch just to show you. So just pour your water first. If you pour your wood glue second, like you dump the water out and then you pour in the wood glue, you're left with wood glue stuck on the inside of here. So either pour your wood glue in first, measure it, dump it out, then add your water, or do it this way, where you measure your water up to a mark. So say, for example, you're doing half a cup, put in a fourth a cup of water, and then a fourth a cup of wood glue. And when it gets up to the half a cup line, you know it's 50-50. So just go ahead, put in your wood glue and your water. Now take your roller and just use the metal part of the roller to basically mix it. You can just wipe it off afterwards. So just like so, mix it together. If your roller doesn't reach into the bottom, just use something else and then pour it in. What you want to get rid of is the wood glue that's just stuck to the bottom there. So once it's mixed, you can go ahead, snap your roller on, just pour it in. So once it's in your tray, just go ahead, put some on your roller. Make sure you roll it out real good. If you have too much on your roller, it tends to streak. And we're going for a lot of coats anyway, so it doesn't really matter if some of the coats are a bit sparse. Okay, so I finished doing the first coat on one, and as you can see, well, hopefully see, it's a lot glossier than the one without the coat. I'm going to do about 6 to 8 coats of this on both speakers, and then sanding. So I'm not sure if I mentioned why we're actually painting these with the water and wood glue mix. So I'm going to explain real quick. MDF is very porous, which means when we go to paint it, it'll just suck up all that paint. Won't look very good, right? You'll probably have to hit it with 20-30 coats of primer before it starts to look like it's actually a solid coat of primer. Maybe not that much, but you know, a lot. So by doing this, we're sealing the wood so it can no longer absorb any of that paint. Okay, so I know I'm probably going to get this question on YouTube, so I'll just go ahead and answer it now. And that's, why are we painting the entire face of the speaker with the wood sealant mixture, and why are we not just doing the edges? So you can prime the top of MDF, and it'll be fine. It's these side cuts that would really get you. So where the wood is cut up here and where it's routed along here, that's where you really need to do the wood sealant. Now, yeah, you can just paint these edges where it's routed and the side of the MDF, but if you do that, you're going to want to use a high solids primer to really fill in the grain where you didn't paint the wood filler on. Now, wood glue's cheap, water's cheap. Why not just paint the whole thing, right? Then it doesn't really matter. You don't have to worry about the high solids primer. And most importantly, if you're painting it across the entire thing, once you sand it, you get rid of the edge where the two pieces of wood are joined, because you have this wood glue mixture that's on top of the wood essentially. So you end up with a much cleaner joint between the wood. Okay, so we just finished sanding down the sides with our 440 grit sandpaper, which gets any of the ripple or the little bumps off that was left over from the wood glue and water mixture. But we can get it smoother by wet sanding. So what you want to do is get a bucket of some just very lightly soapy water, like fill your bucket halfway up, 1 squirt of soap, kind of soapy. Just take our 440 grit sandpaper, give it a little shake, just go back and forth, and what you'll notice start to appear is this white, almost like a pasty looking cover on top, and if you feel it, it feels very similar to wood glue. That's essentially because what we're doing is we're abrading off that top layer of wood glue and mixing it with water to turn it into like a slurry. And when it dries, that slurry will bind to the wood glue underneath it. And it will give us a very nice and even coating that's like no difference whatsoever between the two neighboring pieces of wood, which is what we want. Just make sure when you do this, you keep your sandpaper nice and wet. I have this too dry, for instance, right now. And you can see if I keep doing that in one area, it like gets frothy, and you can feel it stick to the sandpaper. And if that's happening, you're either going too rough or your sandpaper's not wet enough. Chances are it's the sandpaper's not wet enough. We're basically going to do that all up and down each one of the faces of the wood. And if it does start to get too rough, don't worry about it. Just wet your sandpaper, go in big strokes around it. I'll take care of that. We're going to do that to all the faces, make sure they're all nice and smooth before we proceed. I'm going to do another coat of the water and wood glue just on top of this. I nicked it a tiny bit at the bottom, too much came off. Happens, so I'm going to do it again, just make it extra smooth. And then it's on to priming and painting. So I'll just do all the edges again, just drill damp, or slightly damp, I guess. Just make sure that no drips of water get on the side. It ripples wood glue a tiny bit if there's a water drop that just kind of sits there. So hopefully this shows up good on camera. So the light's right next to it, and you can see that it's very smooth. There's not really much, well there's a tiny bit there that I missed, but it's very smooth. If we come over here and I shine that, you can see that there's little, it's like white on top, and then there's like little valleys between it. Okay, so this kind of concludes the first part of the speakers, which is putting together the wood, gluing them, and sealing it. What I ultimately ended up doing is using 600 grit sandpaper, put them actually on my lap in the chair over there, and just went side by side, and that way there really was no extra drips that were left on, because I had it on my lap and I was constantly rotating it so I could see it all. Got real close, so I had a nice visual inspection, found a few bumps and just wet sanded those off. And with it being on my lap, the sides weren't vertical, they were horizontal, so I could really sand it nice and good, have nice control. So that worked the best. So now I'm just going to pull all this up and start prepping for paint.